I still think this is the game that defines the season. You're going to watch Oregon compete in the college football playoff at a high level in the quarterfinal round. You're going to watch Indiana play in the national title most likely. You're going to watch them play Alabama and look like the better team. You're going to think back to USC and watch Lemon get drafted super high. And, in 10 years from now, when we're talking about this team, if you beat Vanderbilt, you go, man, we were a few plays away. But if you lose to Vanderbilt, you're going to start going, well, we never did it.
Welcome back to the ANF Podcast. Today we're going to do a breakdown of Iowa versus Vanderbilt. How we differentiate this sports podcast is we do play, scheme, and personnel breakdowns, and then we try and interwove how the two teams are going to interact with each other, and that eventually leads to our predictions.
Yeah, for Vandy, when you're breaking down all their wins, you see wins against LSU that was a critical loss in the Brian Kelly era. A game that really bopped them on the head and probably put them on the back foot for the rest of the season in terms of being a title contender. And when you have a gauntlet of the SEC, even though they didn't play, Georgia, they didn't play Texas A&M, they still played South Carolina when they were ranked on the road in week 3 when they're ranked 11th. They had to beat Tennessee the last week of the year when they were 8-3 and ranked. They had wins over, Missouri when they were a top 15 matchup. So even though Vandy doesn't have that premier win, they had to stack 4 or 5 wins over opponents that were vying for the playoff at some point in the season or vying for the playoff late in the season. So really this Vandy season, it's not a playoff. It clearly is a step in the right direction. And it's interesting to see Indiana and Vanderbilt, two bottom dwellers for years in college football. NIL gets kicked off. You obviously have some pretty intelligent alumni base, and now giving money to their schools to have better football teams is above the board. And now you have two of their best seasons, the two best seasons in Vandy and Indiana in the last, 100 years, consecutively for both those programs. So it looks like that on offense too. It looks like a team that's been acquired, and there's a lot of talent across this team.
Yeah, I think the easiest comparable for this Vandy team is a team like USC. So how they like to play is your typical 11 personnel group, which is how most teams roll out their spread offense. For the novices within the podcast space, 11 personnel is 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. There's obviously a lot of variation with how you can run your 11 personnel. How a team like Indiana would do it is they like to stay evened up and they like to attack the middle of the field and what you consider the high slot. Vanderbilt's kind of the opposite. They fall into more of what USC likes to do, where they like to play 3 receivers to the field. Mm-hmm. And within college football, the hash marks are wider than you would see in the NFL. And that allows for a wide side of the field to evolve. And Vanderbilt really builds their scheme around using the wide side of the field. And Pavia really is the QB you want to be able to utilize this scheme. So how they create spread, how they create space is, again, through their horizontal alignment. They're going to play 3 receivers to the wide side of the field, and they're going to be out there. They're not going to be in condensed sets. You're not going to see a tight end typically lined up off the edge of the line. They're going to have the guys all the way to the edge of the field, and this creates horizontal pressure from a defensive perspective on horizontal alignment. The next aspect of this is where teams run spread but still don't have the success that you would have seen from Vanderbilt is the ability to then create vertical pressure on you. And then now you can attack the entire scope of the field. What you've seen from teams like Iowa, where you don't have immense talent out wide, when you run your 11 personnel, is now you have unextended edges. And you have quick access to your quarterback off the edge. And now operations are sped up greatly. If a team can add a box without punishment against your team, now you're playing, 7-man boxes and you don't have a numbers advantage. Even with a running QB, you're still going to be, knocking out 3 and 4 yard gains. Where Vanderbilt really differentiates themselves is Pavia's ability to get the ball downfield and their receivers' ability to get the ball down to, have the speed to get behind guys. And that's really where this evolution of spread takes a full scope. And we'll break out close to 10 to 12 plays, just describing where they can attack on the field, how they like to play these 2- and 3-man games, and then we'll wrap it up with some defensive commentary. But I'll kick it over to Kyle just to give you an idea of who Pavia is. So you've seen a lot of what you consider negative news around him for about 2 months. I think it's the exact
on his own accord, though.
Yes, it's not like
it's not he's having the footfalls that are like accidental. Like he's made his own choices.
He's Gen Z. He's bringing in the hate. There's this element of he could become a superstar just through being unliked, like a Jake Paul or a Conor McGregor.
Yeah, it is the Conor McGregor playbook so far in how he's handled the Heisman ceremony, and it was just frustrating to see now. Like when you first see it pop up and you're kind of seeing him from the periphery of your college football fandom, it's frustrating to see a guy behave that way, especially when you're kind of like put up against Mendoza, who could not be a more opposite person in that situation. But then you watch his film and you're just blown away by how hard he plays, how much he's like a foxhole guy. And the first play we'll call out is his reverse concept against South Carolina, which you'll see them run a lot of reverses, a lot of stuff to kind of get you horizontal pressure and just confuse the back end of your defense through kind of trick plays. But through the reverse, he becomes a lead blocker. And generally you'll see, QBs in the NFL era where you see that horrible block, of a Hasselback kind of dive at someone's knees or ankles. Or I think Kurt Warner got like knocked out at one point doing that when he tried to have a lead block. But Pavia accelerates and takes on a 250-pound, I think, D-end or linebacker against South Carolina and throws a block. And the first game I watched was Tennessee versus Vanderbilt. It's the last game of the season. You want to get eyes on how they're operating right now. There was 2 or 3 runs where he would hand the ball off in a QB read situation. The play would be 15 yards downfield, and then the pile would form where they're trying to shove him for a few extra yards. And he'd be the first to the pile, shoving or dragging players off and then getting right back in the huddle. So the team clearly, they're watching him on film, the way he's taking massive hits at his size. They run him between the tackles. He's doing this after the play. He's completely bought in on this team. It's not about him at all until maybe after a first down or touchdown, he'll celebrate, to some extent, but he is bought in all the way. And he's also the key driver of this. If you're the runner-up in the Heisman for Vanderbilt, how crazy of a sentence that is, you are driving this team in the SEC, which is crazy to do. So if you look at their rushing attack, he's their leading rusher. He also has the most rushes by 50 attempts as a 5'10" quarterback against the caliber in the SEC. And the first play you break out, I love that you broke a horizontal pressure because that's something we use for Lester all the time. And this first play against Tennessee is almost a Gronowski type run and a Lester type horizontal pressure he's putting to the wide side of the field. The exact set you're breaking down. You have 2 receivers to the strong side of the field past the hash mark. It's on the left hash. And then they jet out, I think it is a tight end or maybe another receiver to create that one more man advantage. And Pavia being the runner he is, you always have that numbers advantage, but they already have that vertical pressure mixed with the horizontal. So they have 2 receivers with a 3-stack secondary above it. You have a slot corner and deep safety, but the moment that guy goes in motion, there's an outside linebacker who just falls it one step too far. And we probably broke that out in Wisconsin as well about that kind of negative step from that backside backer. The play is hiked, that motion hits, and you see the backer take 1 too many steps. And then Pavia, and the kind of what we can exemplify in this offensive line, how talented it is, wins dramatically on the short side of the field through a power concept. The running back leads through the hole. And since that linebacker takes that negative step, there is nobody there. It's all head up blocking. The only way they win this is someone has to beat a block and then make the play, given the numbers advantage. And you see that linebacker creep ever so slightly back into the play, sprinting down the line. And Pavia doesn't get close to him. Pavia can bend it and house it for 30 to kind of be the kill shot to Tennessee. And it just perfectly exemplifies what they're doing. Horizontal pressure, QB runs, physical offensive line. That's really kind of surprising to see at Vanderbilt. We can break out future plays. But Pavia is the key driver in his QB runs where if it's a big time down, 4th and short, it's going to him. If it's, we need a big drive, he's getting the ball 3 or 4 times the power concepts. And the entire concept and conceptually of their offense, it's really hard to stop, and that's why they've won 10 games.
The next aspect we can jump into is his ability to manipulate the pocket. So we're going to walk through various sets and how you can align against a team like this. You can go, obviously, to 2 high looks. You can go to off coverage out wide. What the spread does inherently is it really frees up your QB's ability to diagnose pressure. Because if there's extra men in the box, there's a reason for it. There isn't, if you're going to align tightly, 2 by 2, how you see Iowa align occasionally, is you don't really know who that pressure man's going to be. If they're going to add a player to the wide side or the weak side, you're kind of lost in that aspect, and that's why you bake in various fakes under center.
Mm-hmm.
When you play spread, if you have 3 guys out wide, you don't get more than 4 over the top of them. Usually, you know that there's going to be pressure from some aspect of that. That really cleans up your picture. So when Pavia is able to diagnose this pressure, he does a very good job of manipulating post snap. And I think the perfect example of this is a 5 front that LSU runs against him, where they get the weak side pressure look out of cover 4-2 high look, and Pavia, he sees it at the snap. He takes his eyes to the right like he doesn't see it, though. And you get Perkins, one of the fastest guys in college football, downhill at him along with an edge D end. He sets him up and then boots it out around him and scrambles for 10 yards. And it's this aspect where it looks like he caught him. You had a great timed weak side blitz. He's able to anticipate it because of his pre-snap, call that's likely coming from that side, and he's able to action it for 10. When a guy like a QB like that, when you get a free runner against a QB and he still gets 10 yards against you, you really start to, kind of lock down. You see a lot of teams just try and contain him.
Mm-hmm.
The other aspect is their timing and ability with their 4-man rushes they see. So if you line up and play too high, off coverage, cover 4 looks, trying to, stymie their downfield pass attack, trying to have enough bodies to the flats, now you're in a place where you can only rush 3 or 4 against him. They have a ton of curl and mesh concepts that take a long time to develop, but since they have a really talented line, they're not worried about Pavia sitting back there and letting the play develop. I think the quickest one I can break down into is a play against Kentucky where they have a 3 wide receiver set to one side. They use Stowers at the middle to eat up the play side linebacker. They run a curl out route combo on the outside to influence the outside curl defender. And because of the time that Pavia has, they are able to hit the late developing 10-yard curl, and he's able to throw through that guard tackle window. I think what you see from this Vanderbilt team, because of Pavia's size, he's probably 5'10". He might be 5'9". Who knows?
He's probably 5'10", yeah.
But traditionally, why you want tall QBs is so they could see over the middle of the field and they could throw that 10-yard dig, which is a part of almost every single pro scheme. Where they like to live because of Pavia's limitations is in this high slot and slot area where you're going to throw between guard and tackle, and he's going to have really nice windows. And they basically build out all their passing attack to exist either in that high slot in 3-step drops, or they're going to roll them to the field and let him play point guard on the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Where this gets really tricky is his ability to scramble. So we'll probably break in 2 or 3 plays of him against 4-man rushes where he is able to skirt through guard and tackle to the weak side. And you'll see this over and over again. If you rush 4 and he's going to have various progression routes developing over the middle, he is going to leak to the weak side for his scramble, and it's going to go for 10.
Mm-hmm.
And he can do this over and over again because the D tackles and D ends do not have the ability to chase him down. He is too scatty. He's like a Lamar Jackson, Johnny Manziel type when it comes to post scramble. And they are just not afraid to let plays develop. They're not a timing based team early. If you're going to line passively, they're going to play a lot like USC, what we saw, where they're just going to sit back there. They're going to wait for a DN to come at him, and he's going to try and make a move on him. But it's just not. They're not trying to play timing ball if you're going to back up.
Yeah. There's a myriad of ways he can escape, and all of his receivers and running backs, you constantly see them play off his scramble too. And I think we want to highlight Richardson as kind of the key weapon they'll have. Stowers is obviously expected to opt out now, which is a huge aspect of this. Leading receiver, Mackey Award winner. He's at high slot you're talking about. He constantly finds them on vertical routes, in the seam and on 3rd down. But that kind of scramble into a throw, which is the most dangerous part about this, because when he breaks the pocket, he can go for 30 yards, 20 yards pretty easily given his athleticism. But his receiver base also knows how to break off their routes in intelligent ways. And against Auburn, Richardson's on a mesh concept where he's on a slant or a straight drag about 3 or 4 yards downfield. Pavia does kind of that Russell Wilson boot out action to the left side of the offensive line. And by the time Pavia's even started it, Richardson realized I have a corner and the hard flats over there sitting on my drag. I'm going to get vertical. And he presses it vertically down the sideline, and Pavia and him sync up for like a 40-yard gain when they're down by 2 scores. It's kind of like a pinnacle moment of like making their comeback against Auburn. And it highlights how athletic Richardson is because he is running down the sideline with his left shoulder turned, sprinting and tracking the ball. I would fall over trying to do this. Like when you're watching it live, it doesn't make sense how he's able to keep his speed while turning his left shoulder to a really small space on the sideline. And it just kind of shows, like, you'll see his running backs too. Like if he breaks the pocket, he'll turn back, and the running back who's been blocking will shoot upfield, turning and looking for the ball. It's that point guard nature that Pavia always likes to play with. But to get back to more like a schematic breakdown on what you actually see a consistent tendency with is if they're in 3rd and long or even like 5 wide situations, you have to always account for Pavia's legs in almost any set they've run in. And against Tennessee, they run the super creative one-man RPO to Stowers, where they show the common QB power we kind of break down with Pavia, where their tackle blocks down, right guard pulls, the D end is expecting that pull to hit him, and then the play side linebacker, who they're RPOing. So this is the key
and
guy.
The play side slot safety. Both get influenced. It's both need to be influenced.
How would you not be? You see a down block, a pulling guard, and Pavia showing a power run. And it's actually he's stealing this. I don't know if he stole it, but Lane Kiffin ran a very similar set where it'd be an inserting tight end through the line, a QB power forward, and then the tight end would shrink behind the middle linebacker. But in this case, the Tennessee linebacker has no shot. He has to fill this. And it's the beauty of RPO, and it's such a creative concept. But Stowers just sits right behind him, and it's a kind of like a one-man pop shot to him. And we have to anticipate this. This is something, even with Stowers out, Spence is actually a really nice tight end. He had like 20 catches on the year, but all of them were really critical downs, and you can tell he can really move. It's not going to be to the point where Stowers was basically an X receiver at tight end, but Spence is now going to be in all of these kind of creative tight end concepts up the seam, and we have to be prepared for him being not as much of a drop as you expect from a Mackey to a backup. So expect him to be kind of a key contributor.
Yeah, and I think now we can move into, I think, the most unique aspect of their game, which is their boot rollout. So we'll get back into the alignments that you're going to likely see against this 3 wide receiver set to the field. If you're in zone, what is required from the outermost corner is usually you need that guy in a vertical zone. You need him in a high zone. If you're going to play him in a squat, which you consider like a cover 9, where now you're going to have a high safety that's going to roll to the field, and then you're going to have your other 2 high defenders roll to like a cover 3. You're really setting yourself up to get beat by the seam. And with this team, they really like to the pressures of spread teams. They're eventually going to the seam, and I could show you, seams against cover 3. They've even attacked a seam against a cover 4. They went 5 high, and they hit a seam shot to Hoskins, where he was able to break by the slot defender and then get up the middle, and then Pavia was able to fit into like a window where he got hit by 2 guys. So they're always going to be putting pressure on the seam with you. Again, we need to hammer home now. Collisions are going to be incredibly important. But with that outermost corner likely being in a high vertical set, trying to take away deep routes, what you've now done is isolate your slot safety and your play side linebacker against the remaining routes on the field. So what they like to do is they like to get Pavia to the edge, which is, how they do that is various ways. A lot of it is usually through read options, where they're going to let the D end shoot to the running back, and then he's going to come around the side. Occasionally, they'll just do straight sprint outs. Mm-hmm. But what it sets up for is various ways of creating this vertical pressure. They can do it through wide receiver screens. They can do it through fakes wide receiver screens, where they're going to then sit down Stowers or their tight end right where your play side linebacker used to be. And all of it is 2-man point guard games where you're going to get Pavia to the stretch. He's going to have a flat route that's going to pull your outermost slot safety, and then they're going to have a curl that sits down where the linebacker's at, and then he's going to have the pressure to run. Mm-hmm. And they set this up over and over and over again. Your response to it then is that you can play match and man concepts to the field, and that's going to speed up your ability to stop curl. It's going to speed up your ability to stop wide receiver screen, and it's going to speed up your ability to stop him to the edge if you have an extra body out there. Mm-hmm. Where they then can go, and I think this is really his strongest aspect, is I think it might be against Kentucky. It might be against Auburn. I can't remember which team, but they run one of these speed outs to the field, and he's moving away from his strong arm. So he's moving into his left side. Mm-hmm. they hit a fade shot to Richardson. So he's got to hit a fade on the run to his weak side up the field, and he puts it on a dime at 15 yards. And that really is the encapsulation of this, of what you need from spread. Is you eventually need to get vertical on them. If they're going to be able to add bodies to stop your QB read and your wide receiver screen and these various curl routes over the middle, then you need to get over the top. And they have various aspects of doing that as well. Going back to that long developing play I talked about against Kentucky, they very much like to set the hook. They're going to play various long developing routes to get you antsy about your 2nd and 10, your 3rd and 10 blitzes where it's like, man, we should be getting home. They set it up perfectly against Kentucky where it's a 2nd and 12. This is typically where teams like to get aggressive with their blitz because they want to get you in a 3rd and medium. They want to get you a 3rd down, maybe even get a sack. They set up an RPO deep shot to Richardson. And it's the first time you really get to see Richardson run in this play. And the guy has just immense vertical pressure. He barely even hits a double move. It's more of just like a stick and go.
Yeah.
But when you see it live, the first time I saw it, because my idea behind this is we're going to pressure them out wide. We're going to 5-man pressure, and we're going to force Pavia to throw the ball downfield. And the minute I saw this, I was like, that's out the door. Like this Richardson guy can get over the top, and you're going to have to respect this. But I think that really then sets the stage for the rest of the offense is if you do not heavy up the box and you're gonna protect yourself on deep passing plays, they have this weak side power rush with Pavia that is almost impossible to stop.
Yeah.
And unless you're getting really good reps from your DNs, you're getting really good reps from your D tackles and weak side linebacker, you just don't have an option for that. And I think what it comes down to, without the absence of Stowers, is you're going to have to be stuck in too high, and you're going to have to back up and play these guys to the goal line because they have the ability to do essentially everything they want with an offensive game.
Truly. It's just like watching USC. It's a different format of it. It's not this downfield pass attack with Lemon just being the, Blitnikoff winner. But when you have the ability to put the horizontal, vertical, and QB run power, pressure against you, that you're checking every box. You're checking every aspect of this. And then you check also into creative run plays and the creative 3rd down plays they employ with Pavia. Almost like going back to watching McSorley at Penn State, you have, a myriad of ways they can force you into, a light box on 3rd and 5 or a light box on 3rd and 6, and then play this numbers game in unique ways. And they have this play against Alabama where they have a running back to the left of Pavia. It's a 4-wide situation. And they pull the right guard. So they fake an inside zone. They pull the right guard. Pavia then blitzes out left. So they have a down block on the left side. The DN's left over there. So either he's going to smell this like pulling guard coming against him. He's got running back going away from him. And then Pavia banks left and puts him in the shovel pass situation. The DN just takes the bait. He gets upfield, goes to Pavia. The running back who is faking the inside zone now banks back to the opposite side. He hits a shovel pass. The guard is intelligent enough not to chase that D-end, who's accounted for. He's now getting vertical and blocking the guard, the play side linebacker, and it hits like this, like super. I've never seen a shovel pass off of running back fake back into it in college football. And then the running back gets 10 yards on a massive 3rd down against Alabama. And it just highlights, you're going to see this variation. And I think if you want to break out the speed options, we're going to see a lot of, and the expectation, if that's where you're going.
No, that's exactly where I was going.
Is you are also seeing speed options on, I've seen them 4 times on 3rd and 6.
Yep.
And South Carolina, you saw it, and you can break out.
Yeah, if you line up in a light box, or even if you're in a heavy set, so Iowa is going to come into this game desperately trying to get off the field on 3rd and 4th down. Like, you're really going to need to seize your opportunities to get off because Pavia is such a good, post-snap player that you just can't bake in a lot of stops. Like, our eventual score prediction is going to be pretty high for that reason. But eventually what you're going to get down to is an edge player coming clean in our nuclear 8 and 7-man fronts that you've seen against Indiana and some of these high-level teams. And where we've seen teams have a lot of success in the past is speed options to the weak side against that. And I think eventually that's coming. I think the one we could break out is the one against Kentucky. They do it on the goal line. We'll just show you a demonstration of it, but that's really where, when you do get aggressive against them, they have just subtle games to the weak side that are very difficult to stop. Another aspect of Pavia playing point guard is that shovel pass aspect, and they do such a cool they do it in such a cool way against Auburn. Well, they line up in their 14 personnel set, which is 4 tight ends, 1 running back. In Pavia, they line 3 tight ends to the left, 1 to the right. They get a wall down, a significant wall down from the right side, and then they bring their 44 is their Wham tight end. He's a really physical guy. They bring him as a lead block with Stowers following him on the inside of Pavia with an outside pressure of an option. So you see the play side linebacker safety and slot safety all race to stop this weak side speed option that we just talked about. But then you also have your interior shovel pass with a lead block. And they get the lead block up to the weak side linebacker. It could have broke.
Yeah.
And they do this, I think, on like a 3rd and 4th, maybe like it's 3rd and 2. But that's another aspect. Is when they can get to the edge against you with Pavia, they are able to create this. We talked about this a lot out of shotgun. Is if you're going to run basic inside zone out of shotgun, you need to create opposite D gap pressure. That is like the inherent, proposition of shotgun run. They kind of spin that on its head. Where now we're going to create D gap pressure, but then we're also going to have a C gap option. Yeah. And when you think about alignment of that, where it's like, okay, they can create vertical pressure outside, horizontal pressure with their alignment, keep you in too high, keep you in off coverage, and then even when they create that opposite D gap pressure, it can become C gap pressure.
Yeah.
So it's like it's the ultimate. They just play this ultimate numbers game on you, and then they have the perfect little guy to do it with.
Yeah,
and he's not making mistakes. He's not making misreads. He's got an immense amount of confidence in himself.
Yeah,
and I think again, it feeds into this back the hell up and hold on for dear life. Yeah. Hopefully, you get a mistake somewhere along the way.
I think 2 more points to end it, right, and then move on to defense.
I've one just unique play I really like that ran.
Yeah, that'll feed in perfectly. But like the first play, we have not highlighted them enough, but what Vanderbilt has done on the offensive line is incredible. And there is an inside zone duo play in 14 personnel against Alabama in the first half. You're at Alabama. It's a pinnacle game of your season. You've kind of had this back and forth start to the game. And on 2nd and 6, I want to say, they just heavy the fuck up and run duo, which means you're just double teaming the front 2 D tackles. Wherever your play side's going to be, you're going to double team both D tackles and then reach up to the second level. They get decent movement on the interior duo block, but their right guard and right tackle take Alabama's D tackle for like a 6-yard ride that comes into a battering ram that leads into Alexander, who we've not talked about enough.
Yeah.
I'd say it's like Carson Hansen, but faster.
Yeah.
I think that's where I live with this guy.
A lot faster.
Yeah. Like Hansen's got good speed, but this guy is just a different level at the 3rd level. I mean, he goes for 80 yards against Alabama. That's not something easily done. And that's a play where, I remember we watched that live. I think we were actually watching the Vandy game at that time. And, that's not Vandy being tricky. That's not Vandy being cute. That's not Pavia making plays. That's running right at the face of Alabama, blowing them off the line and going for 70 yards on the road. Like they have an inherent ability to block you as well. And I think that is the crux of this game, is that you have to anticipate this team is – they lose Stowers for this, which is a big option, but they have plenty of guys.
Especially
their offensive line is their key. Spence can really play still. Pavia is the guy that makes it go. But I think one tendency has broken out a little bit, and Auburn actually called it late in the game that go into overtime, is that when it's 4th and 1, first off, they're super aggressive too. They're almost like Oregon, on their own 34 against Auburn with 4 minutes left in the game, they go for it. But it's back-to-back 4th and 1s, 4th and inches. It's QB power to Pavia. And I think there is a little bit of arrogance to this OC where he's going, I have the Heisman contender. I have this power scheme. I think Iowa could catch them in a 4th and short situation where it's so clearly, they're so clearly going to give it to Pavia because he's the Heisman. And they want to prove this out. They're not going to give it to somebody else where it's going to be, let's go a tight end pop shot here, which they do have.
I know. That's so scary to think, because then if you're key in Pavia, speed option and tight end pop.
They do have counters to it, but I think those are 3rd and short calls. I think that's like, not the last call. When they're going down with the ship, I think it's Pavia. Because it gets Auburn on their own 34, they run it, and then they get to Auburn's 20-yard line. And it's the same drive. And Auburn's defensive coordinator goes, fuck this, I'm not letting them run it again. And he all out blitzes it, and Pavia gets caught for a 3-yard loss and puts the game in overtime. And I think it just seems like if you're thinking about how this OC is going to operate in Pavia's last game, in a critical moment in the fourth quarter on 4th and 1, I have a hard time. It's not going to his hand. So you're trying to get out tendencies on big downs because you're playing a really good offense. You're going to make critical plays. So I think that's where I would be like, I would lean into just being aggressive against it. If you want to summon a shit up with one more play.
Yeah, well, I got just a couple more things just because I want to get them all out there.
Yeah.
But so out of these 14 personnel sets, this is typically their short yardage looks. Where it gets really deadly is these tight end leak outs. So anytime you're going to play heavy tight end formations, you'll see this a lot. The goal line, Wisconsin killed us on this forever. I can't remember which team it's against, but they're in their 14 personnel set. They have one tight end left, 3 to the right, and they motion a tight end over, and it's a downhill fake where Pavia is going to bring his eyes to the left.
Mm-hmm.
The difficult part of this is with that motion, now the outermost corner is going to take this motioning tight end, and now responsibility is actually going to fall to this left safety on the inline tight end, which I don't know if he picks up on the time. And the difficult part of it is that when the play is snapped, Pavia brings his eyes to that outermost edge.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this pressure of you're seeing wham, which also could be a fake where he's going to then wrap around the edge. Those two outermost DBs have insecurity about that edge. You're worried about Pavia either handing off and getting downhill through C gap with a running back, or Pavia moving to D gap with pace. You just completely forget about that play side tendency. He leaks out for a quick little pop shot touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the pressures of this team in short yardage. When you have a QB involved, everyone's so eager to stop that QB run on the goal line. And a lot of these times, these tight ends are forgotten about.
Mm-hmm.
I broke it out a little bit when we did the boot rollouts and the rollout aspect. But this OC is obsessed with his curl game. It's very much an NFL like Madden type system where we're either trying to get vertical with our seam shots and our downfield pass attack, or we're trying to play curl games where we're going to try and fit you in holes all over the field. And a lot of it occurs out of the high slot. So your response to this is we don't really need to account for the middle of the field. So you can add bodies to the blitz game. You can play 5-man blitzes, but you really need guys pressing to these slot areas. You need guys moving out with pace, and maybe you could even hit some buzz routes from your high safeties, trying to bait them into wide side rollouts where they're going to try and hit you with 2 curls and a flat. Like it's a ton of spacing. I've seen probably close to like 7 or 8 combinations of spacing to the wide side.
Mm-hmm.
How can you then bake in counters? A lot of it's probably going to be match.
I think match is like, I keep on going back to match. Just because you want to.
Yeah. I think match is really your way out.
Yeah.
But then you're putting, Lee and Watson into turmoil, trying to guard Richardson down the field.
You want to live there.
But you want to live there because, and Lutmer's going to have the ability to guard Richardson too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what you want to get into is run a lot of C3 match, try and speed up these operations to the edge, take away the short curl game, force them down the field. It's going to get squirrely, but I don't think that giving up long touchdowns or quick touchdown drives is the end of the world, because we're going to get into this defense. So the last aspect of this is their running back wheel game. And they're really trying, with Alexander's speed up the edge, they are trying to set this wheel, over and over again. And how they like to do it, I've seen it probably 2 or 3 times right in this manner, is they'll go to under center. Even the play I remember is under center evened up, where their motion Stowers away. And then they do this really weird under center, like open handoff, where it's like that kind of fake quasi handoff where it looks like boot action. You're getting motion away and you're getting pull action away from this handoff.
Yeah.
So the slot safety on that side and the play side linebacker both don't believe it. They're seeing like reverse boot action to the opposite side. So they just both leave the running back who's coming out at this fake, and then run this like weird where his eyes are inside, even though it feels like he should be looking outside and moving to the edge. His eyes are inside, and they come right back to him and hit him with a quick like wheel route shot to him. Mm-hmm. And it's all like they do such a good job of impacting these slot safeties. And out of C3 and C4, the whole game is played around the slot safety together. They're trying to widen you with Pavia's space and hit you in curls, and then they're trying to either get your eyes away, and then they're going to try and run something behind you. So I think these guys really need to have a good day. So you're going to be talking about Lutmer, you're going to be talking about Shire, you're going to be talking about Entringer.
Mm-hmm.
All of them are going to be in turmoil the entire game. That's where this game's going to be played, is in that slot.
In their decision making.
Yeah.
Well, I think to move on to their defense.
Next time you're looking for an all-inclusive beach vacation, consider Via Puesta del Sol or Via Puerto Escondido, both of which overlook the Pacific Ocean in Ocotal, Costa Rica, providing an exceptional all-inclusive experience for your family and friends. Visit their website, linked down below, for more information or to reserve your trip today. The ANF Podcast is sponsored by Eye Surgeons Associates, proudly serving Eastern Iowa and Western Illinois for all your eye care needs for over 40 years.
After that offensive breakdown, you can understand why the line's at 5.5. You can understand why, this is going to be a really difficult game and a pinnacle game for Iowa's season, because you are playing essentially USC again. And I think you talked about how we didn't get aggressive against USC in the second half. It's something that we wish we would have turned up the pressure a little bit in 5-man pressures, more C3, more making them throw the ball deep rather than kind of let them chew down the field for these longer possessions. I think that's where we have to have maybe Phil kind of trimp the aggression like he did against Indiana in that first half, and that definitely in that second half more than he did against USC, because they're built well. But where I was going to have the advantage here is you're playing also USC on defense in a way where you really aren't blown away by their front six. It's a 4-2-5 scheme that can run a 5 front. But what you see constantly is when they are in too high in the SEC, they have given up 15 and 20-yard runs against pretty much everybody. And especially a team like Auburn, who did not have a lot of success this year, in the first half, they gave up 3 20-yard to 15-yard runs just out of a too high, 4 wide inside zone concept that's just eating through the defensive line. But to break down to 3 actual plays that I could see Iowa, just going to showcase our offensive line have an opportunity in this game is there's a QB power against Auburn. It's like a 1st and goal at the 11-yard line. Vandy's in the too high. It's a pulling guard to the left side of the line. The D tackle gets his shoulder turned pretty easily. The backside DN has no responsibility. He has no one being fake towards him. He stands still. I think it's 24.
The tight end gets him.
The play side tight end easily blocks 29. He doesn't fight through it. His eyes are like on the running back, and it's like a QB powered lead. And then the linebacker has kind of a weird rep where he's like diving below the guard, and then the QB runs in. Then you go to the Alabama game. Alabama did not run the ball well this year at all, but they have 2 successive plays running off the backside of their own red zone, either pinned back deep. They run a duo to the left side of the line, and both D tackles hit the ground. 53's put on his ass. 94 is like driven back and like falls late in the play. And it's just 2 double teams that lead in a massive hole where I think goes for 12 yards. And then the next play is the outside zone concept to the left. Alabama motions to the right. And 22 is like the play side linebacker. His eyes should not be on the receivers. Like he has a duo of corner and safety behind him. He doesn't have quick pass responsibility. His eyes need to be on the running back, quarterback, or the offensive line, whatever his key is. It's not those 2 guys. And they run an outside zone concept. The play side D tackle, 53 again, who I think will actually target a lot, gets washed out. He just is not strong enough to hold his gap, and he gets pressed wide. 22 doesn't read that it's an outside zone concept, and he goes with the shooting vertical receiver and runs like 10 yards back when the play is going right at him. And the play, he can run right under it. The running back does for like 20 yards. And that's Alabama succeeding in the run game against too high, and for different reasons, but mainly because their D tackles just aren't good enough to hold up. And then the last one, Tennessee, they make it 21-all, play side power, D tackle hits the ground again, 99. This is a different guy. It was actually probably their best D tackle in my opinion. I think I've seen him flash the most. But double team, puts him in the dirt. A weird rep by 24 where it's a guard that's coming through. He drops his left shoulder. He should be fucking hitting this guy square on.
And also, you have to give ground. If you get the guard to second level, you got to give ground and try and get a dive to take on this running back. But you are never taught to drop your shoulder on a guard at 4 yards.
And give him your back.
Yeah.
You basically just gets washed out. And then number 4, who I think is the corner you attack. I
think 3 is just as soft.
Yeah, but I think his rep on this, he has a hard rep. It's like the hole's so big, but he dives and misses them. But Auburn went at 4. They had Coleman, who is an incredible receiver, back-to-back times on him to tie the game, put into overtime on fade routes and one-on-one balls. So clearly, if RVZ is going to have a guy to go one-on-one against, it's going to be against number 4. But once again, this run play is just establishing that they're getting mauled in, 3 different games, big situations. And if they stay in too high, it's going to look like those USC reps where all of a sudden some D tackles just going vertical for 3 yards. And this is where Vanderbilt was not a playoff team. This was in the 30s for defense. They gave up, 24 plus points. And I think their last 6 games in the SEC other than Kentucky. And this is where their kind of, championship contending falls apart a little bit.
Well, it's interesting because in 2 of those plays you broke down, they had play side tight ends off the line that were able to pick up DNs that had action inside of them.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, that DN should go meet that tight end, be able to shock him and stop C gap runs.
Yeah,
and both times they did it. I think this is an aspect of a 5 front. So they're going to play a 5 front. I'd put my entire life on it. I think they'll even have 6 front looks because of the inabilities of Iowa to pass the ball. You're going to have a major reaction like most teams of this year, where you're going to line up in the most aggressive set you've seen all year. I think there's going to be aspects of a 6 front there as well. But again, so the 5 front, we played in a 5 front in high school as DNs. All that pressure is outside of you. Mm-hmm. You are terrified of D-gap pressures at the end because if you are able to get to the edge, that's where big plays can happen. And you're really the only one who can stop it with how they like to line their corners. They're very much an off-coverage corner alignment with 2 high looks. So my idea behind this is then our toss sweep that hits inside. Mm-hmm. The insecurity around edge action is going to be super high, and you just don't have that physical of a D-line and linebacker group. I feel like that toss sweep could have a real opportunity to mow them down in this scenario. Mm-hmm. But just going into personnel, like there are 2 linebackers in 10 and 11, and they play 22 and a couple mid 20, 24 a bit. I've not seen a high level rep out of anyone besides 10.
I like 11. 11's had a few.
11's had a couple, but I also see a lot of not so great stuff out of him as well. Yeah. The guys they play at edge, 24-9 and 29, all guys that don't seem super eager to get off blocks, none of them are above 255. I don't think have a difficult time collision against tight ends. I think they're going to get ran over. And then on the interior, 94, 95, 96, and
53.
53.
Yeah.
And I guess you can throw 55 in there too. Again, just have not seen a ton of high level reps. So it's like this whole front 6, I've watched close to 7 or 8 games of them, and I don't know if they flashed one time.
Yeah.
And that's when you're playing a team like Iowa, where I think the idea is just going to be tighten up and run at these guys. Like, do not allow for edge action to come at you.
Yeah.
You have the ability to get to the edge against these guys, but they're not going to be physical enough up front to stop you for less than 3 or 4 a lot of the game. You're going to really be able to suck the time out of this.
That's why it's going to play like USC.
Yeah.
It's going to have a very similar feel where Iowa's going to have success in the run game in the first half. Vandy's going to have success the entire game. But when that worm turns in terms of throwing that 8th man in the box, what does that look like for Iowa? Because Iowa can't do that.
No.
I mean, Vandy will not allow you to throw that guy in, and I think that's where it twists.
Yeah. But I'll break into 2 plays, and then we'll get into their 6 front pressure look. So Texas, on the first play of the game, runs a 3 wide receiver set to the wide side of the field. You get a slot blitz from Vandy, which, it's the worst thing you could see for a wide receiver screen. You get the ball out to the wide receiver screen. It just exemplifies what I've seen a lot of is just bad block shedding, bad collisions from their secondary players and their linebackers as well. Is you get 3 and 7, both do not get a solid punch. You can tell this is not a well rep thing. They both also have chances to dive and put their head in front of this receiver. And I think this is where Phil loses his mind is when you have DBs who look the part, can run, can defend the pass, they aren't willing to self-sacrifice. And that's the hardest part of being a DB is being a tough guy. You had opportunities to put your head through a knee. It's going to suck, but you got to put your body in the way. They don't do it, and it goes for 70. And that's like a very key aspect. That these corners and safeties are like positionally large. Like
they're huge.
6'2", 210, 220, slot safety, but they're not overly physical. And then you come back and you run against Tennessee. They get an edge blitz from their slot safety, number 2, against Aguilar, the QB, in a short yardage situation. The guy comes up and tries to hug him. And Aguilar breaks the slot safety's tackle and goes for first down. And then the worst one I've seen, this might be the worst play I've ever seen in my life at D1 level, is I don't think he plays much, but it's 27 comes. So anytime a team's in too high, we talk about this all the time, these squat corners to the weak side, they're always going to be setting up a blitz from that squat corner at some point because you have safety protection and you're just not anticipating it. They don't. Kentucky doesn't anticipate it. The running back sets way too wide, and he gets a free run at a blindside QB, and he breaks down and then whiffs. And I watched it literally 30 times. It's like, what happened?
Yeah.
How is this possible? And you'll see the tackling and physicality of the secondary is just really low. Like it's just, they're not a physical bunch. 7 is probably my favorite of the bunch. Seen a couple physical plays out of 1, but it's not that overly physical. So we'll move into their pressure looks. And this is where, without a team that's not playing, you can talk about a too high look. You can talk about a team that's just not overly physical front. How they can kind of get out of this, Houdini setup is they can pressure you when you're not expecting. I think that's really where they try, you've talked about this, but they really try and get out of it. So what they run a ton, I think they're on like levels of Nebraska under Tony White, is this 6 front double mug look. And really the aspect of this is it forces the O-line to base out their calls. Because if you are going to slide your protection to one side.
And break it out what double mug means. It means there's 2 linebackers in the A gap.
Yep. So you take your 2 linebackers and you put them in A gap and you widen your DNs and D tackles to get this 6 front against a 5-man O-line look. And really the key aspect of it is these linebackers have speed to their ability. So they can race to the QB fast and they can race out to get to center of the field coverage. And this is why it's such a highly utilized formation in the NFL and college. It's because it just it gets you into base sets from a O-line perspective.
And you have to keep your running back in.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Yeah.
So the aspect of most pass sets is you do big on big, small on small. And it's because you don't want your running back getting matched with a DN with space. That guy's going to get dominated. So when you are in, say, 11 personnel with a shotgun set and you have a running back out to your right, you can anticipate in your double mug that the running back is going to have to fill to the interior to stop one of these linebackers because you need his body on the linebacker. You can't leave him for a tight end. So it dictates that your running back is going to come in the middle in pass protection. And that takes a guy out of the route concepts, and that's why it's people enjoy this look because you can dictate the offense's pass pro.
And those linebackers generally don't impact pass plays often. Yep. You're really thinking about them. If they can dictate keeping the running back in, you're now limited to 4 pass catchers, and they're generally not impactful in the first 2 to 3 steps. This lives out of Mike Zimmer and now Flores, but it's also those 6 guys. They built 29's of essentially a linebacker build.
24.
They feel athletic, at the DN spot as well, where they can drop any of those 6. So you don't really know who the hook zone defender is going to be. And that's if you're in college and you have QBs that are not prepping that hard, maybe they don't have an understanding of how to prep for these type of looks. They might see something like, oh, I got a slot corner at 10 yards. I got a slot guy who's going to be wide open. And then that DN drops. Both linebackers come. He's playing the hook zone, and he's right in the slot where you're going to throw the ball. I think that's where this, how you actually break down this defense, though, is the slot. Given that those hook zone defenders either are the linebackers screaming backwards, they're sprinting with their head turned. That's a tough position to be in. And it also requires a lot of athleticism. Or it's going to be someone that should not be in space. It is a DN that's not going to feel comfortable, batting down a pass or jumping a route. And you see against Auburn, when you're breaking, if you throw on the last, we threw on 6 or 7 of these games, you see this look over and over, especially late in the season. I think they've really understood that we have to help our defensive line get home because we're just not generating pressure with 4, so you're going to give this look anyways. But against Auburn, they run a really creative look where it's a 6-man front defensively. They have to the bottom side of the field, or I guess the bottom side of the broadcast, is a squat corner, it looks like, with a safety at 7 yards in a slot, a deep safety that looks like he's in cover 3 or cover 1, and then a cover 3 look on the far side of the field, which has been, I think it's 2 by 2 for Auburn. Instead of the slot, that corner dropping back and playing a deep third, they actually have that slot safety on the left side buzz out and now protect that corner on the short side of the field where he's running the cover 2 look. So right when the play starts, both linebackers drop out as well. They're only running a 4-man rush. It's cover 2 to the short side of the field and then cover 3 to the far side of the field with a 3 high safety look. So, you're expecting pressure. You're expecting the middle of the field to be open. And before you know it, you got 7 guys in pass coverage with a cover 2 and a cover 3, taking basically all the short stuff away. But what Auburn realizes the next time they see it is that, once again, you're showing that short side of the field, buzz corner, and a deep safety who's going to, or that deep slot who's going to buzz behind that corner. That slot's wide open then, because that linebacker still has to peel back to that hook zone and guard that slot corner or slot receiver. But rather, that linebacker comes this time. And Auburn just runs a 5-yard hitch route and throws it to him right away. I think it's open even if he doesn't blitz. I think this is where Iowa wants to live, is that against Indiana, you can play games against the squat corner over there. And if they're always going to defend, if they're going to have that off slot at 10 yards, if you run 2 hitches over there, you can just create a 1v2 situation against the corner, and that linebacker's in the A-gap. You're not going to tell me he hikes and hightails it to that 5-yard hitch over and over. So I think either you hitch him. I think you saw Tennessee hitch him at 10 yards in a big play. You hitch him at 5 yards in the slot where you have to put pressure on these A-gap guys. And maybe they drop a DN to do it, but it's like a DN versus a tight end in that situation. And
then you just get Gronowski, then just have Gronowski roll to it. Then.
Yeah.
And then play his little...
And play 1v2 versus that
1v2.
DN. So I think I 100% agree with that. And or you get vertical against them, because they cannot run a cover 4 out of this look, in my opinion. I don't see how,
you could run cover 4, but you're inherently with 2 double mug linebackers, those guys are going to be late to the party. And how you can attack cover 4 vertically is you just run hooded post.
Yeah.
You just once that slot receiver or tight end clears the linebacker, it's just got to be up and down in front of the safety.
Yeah.
But I think that's exactly how you attack this. Is the other aspect is also wide receiver screen. Because you have 2 linebackers that can't add bodies to the screening game quickly, do not be afraid to try and block up something out wide, because you're going to get 2-on-2 or 2v3, and that's really something you can get into quick with WeGen.
Yeah.
So I think it fits in well with what Iowa wants to do. Is either you're using Vonnegut up the seam, you're using Vonnegut in the curl game, or you're going to WeGen on the edge and you're trying to set up wide receiver screen against this. But you should have a lot of answers to the 6 front. That's what you're going to see. The cool aspect of this, and I'll break into just one play of how they do a little bit differentiated, but it's kind of falls into what Iowa likes to do occasionally, is a run to 5 front. Again, I forget which team it is, but a 5 front pressure look on 3rd down, where you're clearly in man-to-man across the board, but you have this odd extra body to the wide side of the field. That triggers the running back. He's now, instead of filling to A-gap, he's going to try and slide across the formation to pick up this clearly wide field blitz that's coming. Vanderbilt anticipates this, and they blitz the guy that looks like he's originally manned up on the running back. So if you see only 2 guys to the right, and you have a running back and a receiver, you're like, okay, 100% this is man. And one of these guys is not coming because they both need to account for my running back. They call that they're going to keep your running back in the block, and he's actually coming before the snap and comes through B gap, and it almost like it could have created a sack fumble.
Yeah.
And they do a very good job of anticipating running backs staying in, and they do a bunch of different blitz combos off that, and it's a very difficult thing to do. But if you're anticipating these blitz looks, you got to when aggression comes, you got to meet it with aggression as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest signifier here is just like get aggressive against it. Don't cower to these 6-man pressures.
Yeah, I think the last 2 plays I'll break down from it, or at least the last one I can end on, is I want to see us run a speed option against it. Given that they're flattening this defensive line and extending the strong side in some cases, Tennessee finally sees an actual 0 look. So they're trying to emulate a 0 look at all times, or emulate a cover 1 look with their 1 high safety and like a manned up formation when you have head up defenders. But you know when it's actually cover 0, because they're all going to be at a line at 8 yards. So when you see all 8 secondary defenders at 8 yards, it's a 0. And there's generally 7 guys now stacked up. But Tennessee then realizes that we should have this audible guaranteed if we see a 0, is you run a speed option to the short side, because you're burning 4 defenders on the backside with now a man advantage. Aguilar, right when the speed option starts, it's him, the DN, and a running back. He just has to play the point guard move. He kind of cowards out and doesn't get vertical after he fakes the pitch. He should score a touchdown after this. But it is such an easy way to counter a 3rd and 7. 0 is to hit a speed option to the weak side. I think that is a critical thing we have to do.
Yeah, I think running against it is honestly,
yes.
You could think about even just QB power concepts as well to it, where you could motion a tight end, kick out that extra man to the edge, maybe have your running back pick up the backside DN that's coming through and then run through. But like, I think if you're going to get these looks, like you need to have strong answers for it.
Yeah. And you can tell it's a smart team. Obviously you're at Vanderbilt because they're building out iterations of this that are like really in depth. And they've gone all in on it to the point where against Tennessee, they're running this double mug again and they're showing, I believe it is a cover 3, but when these linebackers bail, you expect them to bail. Like, all right, like they're faking blitz and now they're running. They had one play where they shoot one linebacker back and then he delays blitzes back into the play. And that just shows like this is like iteration 20 of this play. So it's going to be hard for Gronowski. I think Iowa and the offensive staff, I think preparing for this defense, you've seen all these fronts before. You've seen the 4-2-5s, you've seen 5-2s, you've seen, the variations you'll play against. If I'm Lester and I'm Warren and all those guys in that room, you have to just try to map out this as well as you can. And it's really hard because you'll see a single high that turns into 2 high. You see a 2 high that turns into a single high, cover 3. And they've really built out this defense to play. And now you're in game 13. So these guys have, had practice time to install. And it's really going to be the kind of the crux of this game where you see us on 3rd and 6, you see that 6-man front. You're like, all right, this is where the game is going to be played because Iowa's going to stay on the field in this game. You can't have something where you're not, picking up these 3rd downs against a team that's going to score probably 28 points.
Yeah, and again, since you're playing a zone team that likes off coverage, I think what we're going to see a ton of is a lot of spacing. That's just curl, arrow. And it's very difficult to pick up. And I think against this 6 front, it's going to be, you really need to hammer home with Gronowski is to start utilizing this arrow more. It's very difficult. If you catch him with pace and it's a well-thrown ball, if you get off coverage to the wide side, the short side, and you're not sitting in squat, which occasionally these guys are not going to be able to do out of that 6 front, make sure that arrow is utilized at least once to create that outside pressure, and then you really could start coming back to these interior curls in spacing. And that's going to be a huge piece of this. But I think the key aspect of this, and we'll end it on this, is Gronowski, you could tell from almost all these games, I know this goes down to Kirk's preservation of him, but he gets going mentally after he takes a hit. Like if you can utilize your first 3rd and 6, maybe even like a 2nd and 7, just go out and run a QB power with him, get him hit, get him into the game. That's where he seems to relax. I think when you didn't really see it late until Michigan State, all of a sudden we used him like 2 or 3 times in the run game, and all of a sudden the throwing motion came back. Like he started playing confident in the throwing game. So rather than getting him easy throws early in the game or intermediate throws to get him in rhythm, I think you go to his legs early, you put that pressure on them squarely when we're out of shotgun, and then you let the game evolve from there.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be a great game. I'm going to take a Vanderbilt win just because of Pavia. I think he's, well worthy of finishing second in the Heisman. Offers a ton of problems. Our D line has not been dominant enough for me to bake in us stopping Pavia in the running game and in the scramble game. So I think they're going to be really consistent there. But I have the game as a 31-27 loss for Iowa. But again, I think it's been a great game. I think that Iowa's skill set of being a really strong offensive line is going to be able to, possess the ball against this team and lead to a pretty high points output. I just don't see how you stop Richardson and Pavia and Alexander for Vanderbilt. It's just a really talented offensive crew.
Yeah, I think this is, I go the opposite. I think we finally get over the hump. I think Stowers being out, takes away his number 1 option on 3rd down and breaking out a lot of these big wins. It seems like he's kind of the go-to guy in 3rd and 6, 3rd and 10. And I hope Phil just, plays a more aggressive style in this game. I think it's not something where, you go too high for the entire second half. I think you have to action this team a little bit. And if, watching them over 6 or 7 games, what's the last thing you see the most? Or what's the thing you see the least successfully? Deep balls by them. I think you saw it a lot against Kentucky. I think they threw for like 500 yards. But when you're watching them against all these other opponents, you're not expecting Sherrill or Hoskins to really have a one-on-one deep ball against you. I think, Sherrill had that nice post one time. But, rely on the secondary. This is, you probably have 4 guys that are going to be on 53-man rosters at, a year and a half from now. This is where your strength of your team lies. You don't feel great after, the full summation of your front 6. Put that extra man in the box. Go down swinging with your, Lutmer, Entringer, Wampa, and Hall being your kind of key components of like, we're going to try to run with all these guys and actions as quick as possible, because playing a too high set with a QB runner, with this offensive line, with the schematic choices they're making, you're going to feel like, ball possession is not going to be in your corner. And, you do that for the first half. You see if you can hold up, as any defensive coordinator does. But I like to see second half coming out.
Empty the tank.
We're up by 4, we're down by 4. Play like this is going to be played in the 20, high 20s. So I think that's where I get to. And I still think this is an opportunity for Iowa to, it's just going to be the game that defines this season. You're going to watch Oregon compete in the college football playoff at a high level in the quarterfinal round. You're going to watch Indiana play in the national title, most likely. You're going to watch them play Alabama and look like the better team. You're going to think back to USC and watch Lemon get drafted super high. And, in 10 years from now, when we're talking about this team, if you beat Vanderbilt, you go, man, we were a few plays away. But if you lose to Vanderbilt, you're going to start going, well, we never did it. And it's hard to bake in a couple plays against these, close win losses if you never did it. So I think this is where it is a bowl game that is people have, devalued, and, teams are sitting out and not playing their bowl games. But this is such a critical one for both Vanderbilt and Iowa, because Vandy loses, we weren't a playoff team. If Iowa wins, this is a game where we're like, we were on the right track. You sell a different story in recruiting. Like, this is going to be the most viewed bowl game outside of, I don't see Texas, Michigan polling. That polls for sure. That was silly. But I think this is the most competitive game where people are like, both these teams care. Texas and Michigan showing up, that's going to be clearly Texas didn't care, or clearly Michigan didn't care. They have Sherrone Moore stuff going on. Like, this is the game where it's like these two kind of, scrappy teams now battling out for like pecking order. And for the SEC Big Ten arguments, like, this is always important to have your mid-tier teams be competitive and beat these teams to show the depth of this league. So I think it's a real opportunity. And I honestly think Iowa this team deserves it at any point too. It's like a 28-24 win is where I'm going for Iowa. And I think it would just put a stamp on Iowa clearly developed its best offensive line in a long time. It's going to be a historic offensive line. 10 years from now, we tweeted that out, that you're going to look back at having Pieper, Jones, Stevens, Dunker, Lauk as your starting 5 in 10 years, going, wow, that was like $250 million on our offensive line. Gronowski's legs were one of the most enjoyable things to watch this year. Lester broke into his real schematic ability. And we also had, defensive players like Wampa in his senior year and Lutmer emerging, and Entringer as, our 3 safeties. That's going to be something that we're going to look back and be really excited about in a few years. And you need that narrative shifter where you lose this game, everyone goes, that was an Iowa season, 8-5, play competitively, but don't really win the big one, to a 9-4 where Iowa goes into the season next year ranked. And you keep this kind of, good recruiting classes you've stacked together where you have this kind of influx of money coming from the Big Ten mixed with Iowa State now on its, complete rebuild mode. You could have a much different start to next year with a win, because now you're going, ooh, that's probably a top 25 roster with, a lot of key components coming back with momentum from the bowl game. And I think that's why people like to devalue it, but this is going to be the season definer, and honestly a program definer going into the next year.
Yeah, certainly. And just last point on scheme for a moment. I think that you're going to see, I really like your idea of being aggressive, but the consideration though is, without Stowers, where do they go in the red zone for jump ball, for a contested catch? Mm-hmm. And if you can back up this defense and your talented secondary, and then you can get more aggressive on the goal line against them, take away their man advantage in the read option game and QB power. Do they have the capabilities to throw a jump ball to Sherrills, to Richardson? Hoskins is probably a guy, but I wouldn't really rely on him either.
Yeah.
The other last aspect is 5-man pressure looks to the middle. Pavia's limitation of size, if you can get his feet muddled and pressure in his face, that middle of the field is going to evaporate for him.
Yeah.
So you don't really necessarily need to consider the middle field an attainable spot for him if you're bringing 5-man pressures and you're creating some kind of pressure. So that then speeds up your back end. But I think 5-man is eventually where you go. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to break out. But in summation, this is such a critical game for the program. Mm-hmm. You walk through all the considerations, but again, it's Diego Pavia too. This is going to be a marquee game. This is one of the biggest personalities within college football. A lot of people are going to show up to watch him lose. You can be the more physical team and be a dominant force in that aspect. That's going to be a great opportunity for Iowa. So.
Yeah, it's Iowa's going to be America's team in this. There's always been some comments being said from fan bases of like, we're going to be cheering for Iowa in this one, and you want to capitalize on it. And I think like I just mentioned, it sucks for Pavia. He's a guy who absolutely grinds on the field and is a foxhole dude. We'd like to see him pull it back, but like we get it too. You're marketing yourself in a way that's going to get eyeballs and money. So
yeah,
we'll see.
All right,
go Hawks.
Go Hawks.